hope that you really had a great and blessed weekend, and I also hope that you went over the videos that I told you about so that you could easily understand what we're going to be talking about today, which is going to be blockchain technology, you guys. It is the entire epitome of this digital era, okay? So we have to understand blockchain technology, and I'm going to be teaching you about that today. But before we get started, welcome back to Getting Digital with Deja. And you guys, I am sitting on the floor of my content room only because I love the lighting that I'm getting right now. It's like hitting perfectly. It's shining like I am God's child, which I literally am. So yeah, okay, but yeah, so I love the lighting and I love this carpet. It's so cute and comfy. So just like, it's the vibes. And you know, I am sitting crisscross applesauce, so it's really like giving yin yang vibes, like so yeah, that's how we're gonna do the video today. Okay, you guys, so let's first go over the textbook definition of blockchain, and that's gonna be: blockchain technology is a new way of recording data on the internet in a way that makes it extremely difficult to change the data once recorded. Blockchain is a decentralized database across a peer-to-peer network that can be viewed publicly in real time. So essentially, for any cryptocurrencies that use blockchain, it's going to keep track of who owns what, and then also on top of that, a lot of cryptocurrencies have to be able to use or implement blockchain into their whole system in order for the cryptocurrency to even be able to function or able to work. And Bitcoin is one of those cryptocurrencies that absolutely has to have blockchain in order for it to be able to do its job. So most databases have it to where there would be a person or a centralized authority that would go and make entries and changes to that database and things like that, to that data that's being stored there. But when it comes to blockchain, you cannot make any changes to the data that's there. You can only make new entries, and those new entries, when it comes to Bitcoin in specific, have to follow the requirements that are written out in the Bitcoin protocol, which is going to be all those zeros and finding the matches to the hashes and things like that. They're going to have to do that in order to and be verified by all those other nodes in order for it to be added on the blockchain. But once it's added on the blockchain, it is completely permanent. It can never be changed. But that's different from the normal centralized databases, because someone can go in there and just change it or add new things and stuff like that. And there's a centralized point of power, which means there's a centralized point of failure, but we're going to go over that in a little bit. But with blockchain, there's no centralized point of failure because the responsibility is actually shared amongst everybody that is on the network that has access to the blockchain. The most popular, though, reason for using blockchain is to record the transaction history of cryptocurrencies. That is the most popular one, but that's not the only one. There's different blockchain types and there's different forms of blockchain. So instead of the blocks, there's like different things and stuff like that. So I just want y'all to know that blockchain is not just so singularized to cryptocurrencies. So for the sake of, if this is your first time watching any of these videos in my series, I am going to go over how Bitcoin uses blockchain. I did kind of go over that in my last video, but I want y'all to fully understand everything I'm talking about, so I'll go over it again. So a Bitcoin blockchain saves the data about all the transactions made for Bitcoin, which includes timestamps, which records receiver's address, sender's address, the quantity of Bitcoin, and things like that. Then in order for that to be actually added onto the blockchain, it has to go through a consensus mechanism, which means that it has to be verified by nodes. And then also on top of that, all of the nodes or majority of the nodes have to come to a consensus and agree that, okay, this is verified, this can go on the blockchain as a confirmed and valid transaction. Okay, and all of those blocks on the blockchain are connected by the hashes of the previous transaction. So you can think of it, and they're put into blocks. So you have a block, and that's literally a transaction, a Bitcoin transaction, and it's connected together by that previous Bitcoin transaction's hash. And that hash is just going to be like a generated ID number or a fingerprint, digital fingerprint for that specific transaction. And no transaction on this world or in the blockchain will ever have the same exact hash because they all have different details. And the smallest detail change that you make before putting something into a hash function will create a completely different hash, which is why none of these transactions will have the same hash, because they will never be created at the same time. They will never have the same exact quantity and everything, all of that, all into one block. But in order to even be able to add anything to the blockchain, it is essential that you have the previous hash of the previous transaction first. That's the only way that it's going to work, because Bitcoin's blockchain puts things in chronological order. So you cannot even begin to work on another transaction until this transaction is completed and added on a blockchain, because you're going to need that previous hash to put it in your transaction summary hash, which is going to be completely different for every single blockchain. Now, if none of this made sense to you, please refer to my past 3 videos. I have one on hashing, Bitcoin mining part 1, and Bitcoin mining part 2. If none of this made sense, but if it did make sense, congratulations. So the first transaction on a blockchain, like the first ever recorded transaction on a blockchain, is going to be known as the Genesis block, okay? And I think that's cool that they call it Genesis block, because you can think of the book of Genesis in the Bible, and it's literally the beginning of all creation. So it's I feel like that was the correlation. Not sure if that is the correlation, but I just came up with that in my own head. Okay, now moving on. Blockchain is kept on a P2P network, which is going to be a peer-to-peer network. I have an entire video dedicated to peer-to-peer network. If you don't know what that is, stop right now and click on it. It's going to say Bitcoin network. Click on it. So with this blockchain being on a peer-to-peer network, there's no one person who's in charge of this network, okay? You have what they call nodes, which are just essentially computers with the specific technology on it to be able to, and software on it to be able to run on this blockchain and things like that. You have nodes, and they share and communicate with each other and verify transactions and keep the blockchain accurate and updated at all times in real time. So all of these nodes have a copy, an official copy of the blockchain history on their computer, saved to their computer. So everybody's blockchain history file looks exactly the same. Now, if you wanted to alter this in any way, alter the past transactions, you would not only have to alter all of the past transactions on your blockchain, but you would also have to alter the past transactions of all of the computers or the nodes that also have this official copy. So not necessarily all of them, but majority of them, because when it comes to this Bitcoin blockchain technology, majority rules. So it doesn't have to be 100%, but it has to be a lot more than half. And if you understand how many computers and nodes are on the blockchain network and how much time and effort and energy and power that would take to alter that, you would understand why they say blockchain is impossible to penetrate. But nothing is impossible. The sky is the limit. As above as below. So it's just I don't think it's impossible. If you're really determined to do it, I'm pretty sure you could do it if you had the right technology and the right people backing you and things like that. But it is extremely hard, because you would have to have all those other people on board with you to change all of their information on their blockchain history as well. Okay, so let's go over why blockchain is so important and imperative to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is the first cryptocurrency to successfully run on blockchain. Okay, without blockchain, there would literally be no Bitcoin. So the concept of blockchain used to record transactions and store transactions was created alongside Bitcoin to make Bitcoin possible. But there is no single blockchain. So the blockchain doesn't belong to Bitcoin. It was just created, I guess you can say Bitcoin inspired the blockchain essentially to be created. So like I said previously, blockchain technology can be used in a variety of different forms of applications and can be created by a lot of different entities, okay? And so some of the most popular companies or just entities that you would know of that have their systems running on blockchain is going to be Walmart, Pfizer. Yes, the pharmaceutical company Pfizer runs on blockchain. Visa, IBM, Microsoft, JP Morgan, BMW, and then you have other cryptocurrencies that are super popular, which are going to be Ethereum, Solana, XRP. They all have their own blockchains. Now I'm going to do a video on the XRP ledger. Just kidding, I already have a video on XRP ledger. When I talk about all things XRP, please go check out that video. But XRP literally is an example of another form of blockchain, and it's called XRPL. It has its own, completely own ledger. Operates a lot like Bitcoin, but It is its own entity. It's its own thing. Now, all these other applications like Walmart, Pfizer, and all those people, they use blockchain for like security reasons, to track supply chains, you know, to record data and things like that. So it's kind of like the same reasons that Bitcoin uses it, but they have it for different, completely different products. Like Pfizer is a pharmaceutical company. Crypto is a crypto company. It's a money company. I mean, if we're being honest, Pfizer is a money company too as well at the end of the day, but we're not going to get into that. But I'm just saying, like, it has two different like applications, but it has like the same criteria and characteristics of a blockchain. So a lot of times in the crypto world, you'll hear the terms Bitcoin and blockchain used interchangeably. But I don't think that that is very accurate, and I think that's misleading because Bitcoin is a blockchain, but a blockchain is not Bitcoin, if that makes sense. That's like Apple is a smartphone, but a smartphone isn't Apple. A smartphone could be Samsung. It could be Google, like all other companies. Okay, so when they say Bitcoin and blockchain used interchangeably, I think that is a little bit misleading, but that is a big thing that they do in the crypto world. So if you hear that, don't try to correct nobody. Just know in your head what's actually right. Or if you want to correct somebody, you totally can. Because you know me, I would correct somebody in a heartbeat. But that's just me. So in 2009, when Bitcoin launched, it was the first example of something or cryptocurrencies being used on a blockchain in the real world. So that's why they get like so, you know, kind of like misconstrued or like lumped together in the same thing. But I do want to say, okay, you guys, it is time for fun facts. Okay, you guys, so the word blockchain was actually like the two words together was actually never mentioned in Bitcoin's white paper. It was never mentioned in Bitcoin's white paper. Satoshi Nakamoto, which is the creator of Bitcoin, actually used the word block 67 times and the word chain 27 times throughout that white paper, which essentially is just like all the details and everything about Bitcoin. So then that's when they came up with the term blockchain, just kind of lumping them together. But the word blockchain was actually never even mentioned by Satoshi Nakamoto. So when Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin and with the implementation of the blockchain, he wanted to answer two questions, okay? So this is straight from the white paper. In an online network where members can send digital money to each other, how can you be sure that others aren't duplicating their money? Okay, so that was the first question. The second one was, in a peer-to-peer network where members don't know or trust each other, how can members collectively agree on a specific truth? Okay, so I feel like he successfully answered both of those questions while making Bitcoin and implementing the blockchain, because essentially blockchain shows you who has ownership of what, the transactions, who sent what to who at what time, what are the details and everything of that. And then also on top of that, to answer the second question of how could they all agree to something and validate something even though they don't trust or know each other, you have the consensus mechanism, which is essentially where it takes majority to rule, but in order for a majority to rule, they have to find a match while following the rules and requirements of the protocol that is built into the Bitcoin software. So you have to follow all these rules, mark off, checks off your box and stuff like that in order for it to be added to the Bitcoin network. But you also don't have to only do that. Just because you found the answer or the match to that transaction, that transactional hash, you have to update your ledger and then share it to the other nodes to where they can include it in their search. Like they have to put the number that you found in their nonce as well to confirm like, oh, it works for us too. So we're going to verify it and we're going to all put it on our blockchains as well and update it across the world, across the network. So that is how that consensus mechanism plays a part into answering the second question. Okay, and the first question was like that's already answered because it's on the blockchain and it can't be changed. So that's how you can keep from people duplicating transactions, you know, and falsifying transactions, because once it's on there, it cannot be changed. It is permanent. So I think that he did a great job of answering both questions while creating Bitcoin and implementing blockchain technology onto that. So let's break down every single word that I just said: distributed, decentralized, and ledger. Textbook definitions. Ouchie. Textbook definitions, okay? So, a ledger is a sequential record of transactions, which is usually used by accountants. That term is usually used by accountants. You'll find that in banks and things like that. Banks have their own ledgers and things like that, but it is a centralized point. So the bank is the only people who have access to change anything on that ledger, okay? Now, a distributed ledger is a ledger that is replicated and shared among multiple participants, okay? Just like Bitcoin, okay? They share the ledger with all of these nodes. All of these nodes have to have the ledger actually downloaded on their computer in order for them to even validate any transactions, okay? So the last part of this is going to be a decentralized ledger. And that's going to be no single authority is able to control what is written on shared ledger. So no one party can control everything that's written on there. No, everybody can make changes to the ledger, or I can say entries to the ledger, but nobody can necessarily change anything that was done in the past. Nobody can, no matter how much power you have, no matter if you're the president of the United States. You cannot change past transactions that are on the ledger. You can only add new entries. But those new entries can only be added if you come to a consensus with the rest of the nodes, with the rest of the computers on the network. That is the only way that it can be added on to the ledger, which is going to be AKA the blockchain. So a distributed ledger. We're going to keep it going. A distributed ledger, okay, does not have to be on blockchain. Distributed means that it is shared amongst different computers and software and stuff across the world, around the world. That's why it's just distributed. Oh my God, this is really a tongue twister. That's why it's distributed around the world, okay? Just like you can think of like Amazon Distribution Center. They have like this little point, and then it's like distributed, like everything is distributed. Everything is just distributed around the world. Oh my God, I ain't going to cut. Nope, I'm going to keep this in here because this is for the jokes. So a blockchain is considered a distributed ledger, but a distributed ledger is not considered blockchain. So blockchain focuses on how data is organized and linked together and like put into like a little box, right, for each transaction. Now, a distributed ledger only focuses on distributing that data to different people, different entities, different computers, and things like that. So it's like they're not so much focused on the organization of data. They're more so focused on the distribution of data. So that is a major difference between a blockchain and a distributed ledger. So also a blockchain is known as DLT, which is going to be distributed ledger technology. So back in the day, before there was even computers, or before blockchain was even like considered a thing, like ever, what they would do is they would have one person or a set of people who would write down transactions and things like that in a little notebook, a little notepad or something, and they would store it away in a safe place and keep it safe, and they would make changes to that piece of paper. Now, obviously, you can see how a lot of things can go wrong. Somebody can steal it, they can lose it, they can burn it, somebody can take it and wipe out transactions, change things. The wrong thing can be added there and nobody can say anything about it because it's only one person or one little group of people who are put in charge of it. So that's just a no-go, okay? Now, when computers were created, that's when they started keeping things on a database, okay? So essentially, they're taking all the information that is on that paper and putting it into a computer, right? Now, you're putting all that stuff into a database, but then that database can easily be hacked into, it can be destroyed, it can just one day decide not to turn on. Like, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Now, okay, so they're like, okay, we're going to distribute it to different computers, right? But the original copy, there's only one original copy, and that's going to be on that computer. And if anything happens to that computer and that original copy is lost, you see how there's like that's a big problem, right? So the cool thing with blockchain technology is that the original copy is the main copy. The main copy is the original copy. Every single node on the network has the original main copy. Any changes made to that literally is going to be made across all of the blockchain files. So what you could say is it's not even really considered a copy if we're being for real. It's just considered a file that's just shared and updated by each other because it's not a copy, you know? There's not one original. The original is what you got in front of you. Like everybody has their original, okay? Which is really cool because banks and stuff like that, That's not how it works. It's a centralized power, and you know, they have the original. They can make changes to it and things like that, but they wouldn't dare share the original and allow people to change the original. Like, they wouldn't allow you to log into your bank account and change anything on there. Girl, I would be a millionaire, please, if they allow me to change my ledger. But so, like I just said, you know how I literally just was like, if they sent me the original copy and stuff like that, I would change it to where I would make myself a millionaire. I'm not the only person who thinking like that, and they know I'm not the only person thinking like that. So blockchain actually stops from that even being a thing or even being possible. You cannot change the blockchain to make yourself rich. No, because every copy on the blockchain is the original copy. And like, no, you just can't do it. You just can't. I mean, you probably could if you had like the right technology and stuff like that, like later down the road when AI takes over the world. But as of right now, it's not possible. Okay, you guys, that is it for today, and I really hope that I gave a really good teaching on what blockchain technology is. And I really want you guys to understand this, because blockchain technology is literally taking over the world. We are in this digital era right now, which I believe is going to continue for like the rest of time until like humans like create their own downfall for real. So you have to understand blockchain technology. It is the new way of life. Even stocks and things like that are being added to the blockchain. Real world assets are being added to the blockchain, which means like real estate, which means like all the things that have a lot of value. There's so much assets, you know, that are being added to the blockchain. So I want everybody to be able to understand it. And if you just like feel bored one day, you know, just kind of play around with the blockchain. You can go to the XRPL ledger and you can play around with it just to like have a representation or an idea of what it's like, because within a few years, you guys, that's what we're going to be using. Everything is going to be on blockchain because it's safe, and there's a lot of control that goes into it that it's overlooked. So just another way of controlling us, but it's going to be used, you guys, and I want you guys to really understand how it goes. And I will be back on Wednesday talking about a whole new crypto topic for our Crypto 101 series. We're keeping it going, you guys. And so on that note, I want to remind you guys that pretty girls can do crypto too. All right, toodles.